thing that surprises me the most are the students who may struggle verbally, that all of a sudden you put Maker's Empire in their hands and the world just opens up for them. They start creating and designing, and all of a sudden they're the one in the class that everyone wants to talk with, because they're like, how did you do that? And it's normally my quietest learners who all of a sudden they find that that moment, that they find their strengths that we never knew they had. They might struggle in reading, they might struggle in math, but oh my goodness, can they design in the 3D world? And the designs that they come up with and that they're able to share with their classmates is just amazing. It's that moment, that electric moment when someone has designed something and everyone's in awe of what they've designed. And I just love that moment.
One time that I was surprised by students using Maker's Empire was when I had some time to give kids free time. Pick something in the class you wanted to do. Build something, play something, draw something. And most of my kids said, can we play Maker's Empire? The maze game was just such a draw for them. They would sit there and design the maze and share it with each other and play. And it really became like a school favorite. Kids across grade levels would design mazes and they would challenge their classmates to make better ones. It was really great having the ability to share those mazes within our school and then within the greater Maker's Empire community. So really surprised that given the opportunity to do anything, a lot of my students gravitated towards the Maker's Empire app.
I was working with first graders and I was trying to explain to them the difference in an inch and a centimeter, because our students create designs on Maker's Empire and then often they come out way too small because they're not looking at that aspect scale ratio. So I did a lesson with first graders and one of my first graders said, so you're telling me that if I make something and it says 1 cm right there, it's this tall? And I said, yes. And they said, okay, I have to keep this in mind because that's just too small.
Being in distance learning, I introduced the kids to Maker's Empire, but not all the kids were able to download it because they had district devices. So I kind of slowed down, but I had already told them about it, and one of the kids, actually a few of the kids, took off with it. But one of the kids made an appointment with me just last week to tell me about what he wanted to show me what he had done. And I was just blown away because one of the things that really impressed me was this Bugatti car that he designed. And he figured out that he could sell it in the Maker's Empire community for points. And it was successful because kids or whoever it was bought it from him. And he's now got 700 points with which you can buy like little designs that are already, things that are already made. And I thought I was doing really well. I only have 50. And so I was blown away.
I think the biggest aha moment I've had with Maker's Empire is realizing that I can use it in a variety of different ways. When I first started using it, I used it solely as a design process tool. How do we make bubble wands? Let's go through the steps. It wasn't until I realized that I can use it for teaching other topics that really it became a more inclusive part of my class. Also, one of the real moments that I realized that it was more than just a CAD program is when I started using it as a pixel art program. Students were able to design things and using the Blocker app. And we had no intention of printing them on a 3D printer. We started printing them on a color printer. Kids were able to make art. Kids were able to make designs that were really beyond what I thought the CAD program could do. So the aha moment for me was realizing that this program this software could be used for the whole year. It could be used throughout different curriculum topics and in a variety of ways. And I could also use it for all my students, grades K through 6. It offered something for everybody and it was able to have kids use it at their own entry level. Some kids were designing incredible things, and some kids were still designing fairly basic things. But it was enough of a program for everyone to be able to engage in it, to work with it, and to have some sort of final product at their own level.
I've had so many aha moments, but most of the time it has to do with not me. It has to do with, I don't know how you do this. And having students gather around and be like, I figured this out and I'm going to share this and so forth. For me, my aha moments with Maker's Empire have always been connecting with other classrooms and being inspired by other designers and them sharing the meaning behind their designs, because that to me is the real power. It's not designing in a solitary situation. It's designing in a much larger environment where your design matters and you're sharing why it matters.
My biggest aha moment as an American teacher for Maker's Empire is totally the math. We are always trying to get our students to understand measurement. And we do use standard measure, and then also we use the metric system later in 4th and 5th grade and then on up. However, anything with science is always going to be in the metric system, and you'll find the metric system becoming more and more prominent on many of the products that we buy. So, the aha moment for me, Maker's Empire makes the metric system become real life for students. They have to understand it in order to make their prints. And it's just made it so much easier for students to want to really dig in to that type of measurement.
An aha moment that I had with Maker's Empire was actually when I realized that I could tie my curriculum to different Maker's Empire projects and make it tie it in and have it integrated, and that way I'm not spending an extra time. That was my aha moment.
My students love the mazes. They just so enthralled. And at first I thought, mazes, how is that going to really teach anything? And I was taught. Because we were learning about landforms and how water affects landforms, and I had learners in 2nd grade who went into the maze design and created what water does using the mazes, and then they would go through and explain, like, this is my maze and this is how the mountain is being affected by the erosion of the water, and here's the river, and so I'm always amazed at what my students use Maker's Empire for.
Well, we've had a few. One of them was successful and exciting was creating the mazes, and we used a lesson plan from Maker's Empire to do that, and it was actually really exciting because I didn't realize how easy it could be to make a maze, and I was thinking of all these complicated ways, and the lesson plan and the video that goes along with it is actually really great. The other one was making story characters, and the kids were very successful with that. Anytime we read a book, if it lent itself to making a character on Maker's Empire, we did that.
To me, Maker's Empire is an essential part of design thinking. It is the entryway for my students to share what they are thinking and designing, and we've done so many different projects, and right now we're doing a lot with STEM stories and taking literature and saying, okay, you just listened to this story. Now what could you design in the physical world, but now what could you design in the virtual world? And we go to Maker's Empire to design in the virtual world because there is Blocker, there is Shaper, there's so many different ways to access what a student wants to design and bring to life in a 3D environment.
Using Maker's Empire now for the last several years, and I have nothing but great things to say about it. The number one benefit of using Maker's Empire with my students has been that it's intuitive in its design. Students don't need a lot of instruction on how to use it. You can hand them an iPad or a computer. You can tell them to play, and they will pretty quickly learn a lot about the software. Maker's Empire has made my class fun. A lot of times we try to do hands-on building. But when the kids walk in and see those 3D printers, they're really intrigued by it, and they really want to have the opportunity to use them and to print something. Maker's Empire spans across all curriculum topics. There's nothing I teach that I can't somehow incorporate into Maker's Empire, whether it's the design process, whether it's specific curriculum topics. We always find a way to bring it in and somehow use the software to help our learning.
I think that Maker's Empire really has a lot of benefits. First of all, the kids are tech savvy these days. It's something they grow up with. It's their future. It's who they are. But besides that, it really gives them that spatial intelligence, spatial reasoning, spatial awareness.
Obviously, visual spatial concepts. Our students, if you're in person, you're using flat things all the time. And we're instructed to do 3D concepts in math. And we show them shapes and we look at shapes, but you are never really going to get that understanding of the complete shape from all sides unless you use something like Maker's Empire. It opens up a world of possibilities for your students with all of your 3D geometrical concepts.